Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. Big Show brought to you every day. Right around 5 o'clock, we try and get to whatever's going on in the world of sports. And of course, we've got some Pirates to talk about today. I guess what we can start to talk about here is that you had your boy, Connor Griffin, who basically, I don't know, put on a show. Is that a good way of saying it? I'm not sure. I just know that when you think about it, it's going to be very, very interesting to see as this goes along. If he does, 2 home runs of 400 plus feet every day in spring training, it's going to be real hard to keep him out of the lineup, isn't it? Of course, again, I mean, it's spring training. Let's not go. Let's not go crazy with it. But at the end of the day, I think that people should feel pretty good about it. Of course, the Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino. Get your all of your needs at FanDuel Casino. All your gambling needs. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. We'll talk a little bit about the way that you can use your FanDuel app, even though it's not football season yet. It is still a good day to use your FanDuel app because you can bet on just about anything you want to bet on. In fact, I actually the other day was kind of just messing around with it a little bit. And you can bet on cricket. You can bet on badminton. You can bet on tennis. You can bet on anything you want to bet on. It's incredible if you get on your FanDuel app. So get on your FanDuel app and go and try and make a little bit of money for yourself. Now, we are getting down to the nitty-gritty here with the Pirates. They are starting to play some spring training games. We're starting to get a chance to see some of the players. Like I said, today you had Connor Griffin, who hit the ball a mile, not once, but twice. That was pretty impressive. He hit towering home runs twice. And at the end of the day, I think that it's important to remember that it's just spring training. But it's just, quote-unquote, spring training. And I don't know that, you have any other way of measuring what exactly is happening with your players from the standpoint of other than, spring training, they're actually playing games. And since they're playing games, well, guess what? You have a chance to watch these guys grow up a little bit, see how they are able to sort of develop, right? And I think one of the things that you have to remember is that you are absolutely now starting to see the team that's going to come together and they're going to put together. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty good. And I think that's where we're at with all of it. It's just important to remember that from the standpoint of you have the ability to watch this team play every single day. And I think when you do that, look, there's some good pieces to this team. I think Connor Griffin, if he continues to do what he does, and he's able to do it from a standpoint of, he is able to hit home runs like that, and he's able to prove that he's a major league bat every single day. It's going to be really important, that he continues to do that. Hang on. That was a little bit of a what do we call that? Intermission. Anyway, I lost my train of thought here because a lot seems to be going on around me. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the pitching staff, though. I think when you look at the pitching staff, there is some real reason to feel good about every single thing, there are some real reasons to feel good about what's happening to them. And, to me, everybody assumes that because they've got these guys that have quote unquote talent, that it's going to turn into they're really going to be a good pitching staff. There are going to be some growing pains for sure. There are going to be, a few growing pains where you are basically looking at that and you're saying, well, it's just the way that it is with young guys. But here's what I'll tell you. They have some good options among their younger players. They've got some really good options. And I think that's the thing about it that is important. They are able to go, 3 or 4 extra guys deep when they're trying to figure out what their rotation is going to be. Clearly, it's easier if Braxton Ashcraft and Bubba Chandler are good enough. Clearly, it makes their whole entire season outlook completely different. Because if those two are good enough, okay, then the reality is the staff should be really good, even no matter who the 5th starter is. And I think that it is going to be interesting to see how that works, to be honest. That's where I would tell you. You've got those two really probably hold the key to what happens with the Pirates this year. And I know there's a lot of people that really, they get upset when you say that neither of them are guaranteed to be that good. Neither of them are, a guarantee to be stars. They just aren't. You have maybe the ability to project and say, hey, they both were reasonably good and their little bit of time that they got last year. But you've got to remember this. The truth is, okay, that now every single team has plenty of film on both guys. Every team does. So to me, I'm looking at it from that standpoint, and I have to say, I just don't believe that we that we can say, well, these two guys are going to be stars. They don't have to be stars, but they have to show progress, and they've got to get better, and they've got to continue to just grow and develop into legitimate major league starting pitchers. But if those two guys pitch well, and there's a good chance they will, because both have talents. Both have talent, period. Okay? The reality is, you look at the Pirates rotation, it looks completely different. I would say this. You know what you're going to get from Paul Skenes. Okay? And again, knock on wood and everything else. Let's assume they all stay healthy or reasonably healthy. If a guy has a 15-day DL or, whatever, a couple of guys, they might have some soreness or whatever. But for the most part, let's say they all stay relatively healthy. Okay? If they are able to stay relatively healthy, you know what you're going to get from Paul Skenes. His numbers are going to be very similar to last year. He's going to be in the running for the Cy Young, right? He's going to be in the running for even maybe the MVP of the league. He's going to be one of the 2 or 3 best pitchers in baseball. So let's start there. Mitch Keller, and again, I don't think there's any question. Sometimes, you hear about sophomore slumps and all this. I think Paul Skenes I think he's just spectacular. And I think, he's going to be, again, every bit the best pitcher in baseball, or one of the 2 or 3 best pitchers in baseball. And I think he's going to give them, every 4th or 5th day, or I guess every 5th day or whatever he goes to the mound, they have an opportunity to win. He's going to do that for them. That's how good he is. Their second starter, to me, is also reliable. And I'd say it's Mitch Keller. Now, Mitch Keller is frustrating as hell. There's no question. You look at Mitch Keller, he is really frustrating. He's the kind of guy who, if you look at his stats and you look at his career, a lot of times his numbers are not as good as you would like them to be. Okay. His ERA for his career is 4.51. Really, if you look at his last 4 years, he's not been under 4. He's been under 4 once. His whip is 1.38. He's been a guy who's been right around 1.25 to 1.35 his entire career with his whip. But he'll eat innings for you. He will eat innings for you. 170, the last 4 years, 176, 178, 194, 159. He'll eat innings. He will also be a guy who gives you a pretty reasonable strikeout to walk ratio. And he'll also be a guy who has stretches where he looks really, really good. So to me, I look at Mitch Keller and I say he is a sure thing as well. I think he's a sure thing as well. He's just got to get more consistent. Period. And if he, and even if he doesn't, he's somebody who is going to give you probably, let's say he goes to the mound 30 times, he'll give you 10 really, really good starts. He'll give you, 10 to 12 just okay starts, and then he'll probably have 6 or 7 or 8 of those bad starts. But you can rely on him from the standpoint of you know what you're going to get from him. And the thing about it is, he's the kind of player, because of his contract, if he pitches well in the first half of the season, Jared Jones comes back, say, early June, he starts to really pitch well. His first 3 or 4 starts are really good. It's pretty clear he's going to get back to, form. You know what you can do? You can trade Mitch Keller. And you can trade Mitch Keller because you've got that luxury with Jared Jones coming back. So to me, the top 2 spots in your rotation, I think you've got a really good idea of what you're going to get from those 2 positions. That's why Ashcraft and Chandler are so important. Because if Ashcraft and Chandler are anywhere close to what the Pirates need them to be, and think they were going to, and think they can be, and where they have been rated as prospects, if they're anywhere close to that, now all of a sudden the Pirates have 4 really good, really reliable pitchers that they can, send to the mound every 5 days. And after that, again, there are some options and some depth that maybe, people aren't even thinking about. You've got that Jose Urquidy. I mean, I would hope that you brought him here to do what you do with all your veteran guys. He comes in, he holds a place, he pitches well enough that you can trade him at the deadline and get something in return for him because he's old. And then by that point, you've got Hunter Barco, you've got Thomas Harrington, you've got, again, Jared Jones. You've got some depth that you have the ability to say, okay, we've got 4 of our 5 spots anchored. We've got 4 spots anchored out of the 5. You put Urquidy in there in the 5th spot for the first month and a half, 2 months of the season, and he pitches reasonably well, you trade him. Because the bottom line is you've got some younger guys in Hunter Barco or Thomas Harrington, and I don't know what the actual plan is with either guy, but it wouldn't hurt me if both guys were given an opportunity maybe to go to the bullpen for a little bit, just so they can get used to pitching against major league pitchers. And then, as they show some competence and whatever, then, they can move up to, being starters. They start stretching them out. I just think that is important, really important. Like, there are some very, very, very important, decisions that need to be made. And these guys will probably do whatever they need to do to compete with each other. That's going to be the exact truth. It is just really, really important for these younger guys to really sort of take that next step. Because again, Ashcraft and to a lesser extent Harrington, but Ashcraft and Chandler are guys that now teams have film on. Teams have film on them and everything else. That's the key. So I feel like it's important, to note that. It's important to understand that. It's important to remember that. Like, those are what I would call, those are the guys that they have to take the next step. Period. They have to give the Pirates a legitimate option when it comes to their third and fourth starters. But they changed their pitching coach. I'm assuming they've changed a little bit of their philosophy on developing pitchers. There's a lot of discussion about Donnie Kelly being really good at working with young players. I mean, there's a lot that you really like about it, to be honest. And I think that's where, to me, it's so important to understand that one of the reasons that there's a lot of people that feel like Donnie Kelly is the right guy is because he, does work really well with and relates to younger players. And so this team right now, the entire major league roster, in so many ways, I mean, it's going to be full of young guys. There's some veteran players, and it's good that there are some veterans, and I think, they need to be veterans. But what I'm telling you is, this is a team with a lot of young players, and especially pitchers. That's where it's important. And I feel like it's great. And it makes this team exciting. And it makes this, season exciting. But it kind of has to all come together. Period. It kind of has to all come together. And it starts with those two young guys, Ashcraft and Chandler, I think at least. It starts with them, and that's where it ends too. Because you have to understand that it's so important, okay? It's so important for these young players to take a step forward this year. I mean, I don't think this year has to be a year where the Pirates get to the playoffs, but it has to be a year where they really take a big step forward and take a stride forward. There's a lot of people that want to know about Paul Skenes going forward. The reality is, you can't worry about that because it's out of your control. You'd hope that the Pirates will sign him. You'd hope that the Pirates will be willing to give him, at least in arbitration, what they are, what he's going to command. Like, arbitration should not be something that scares the Pirates away. So it's just really important for this team this year to sort of take that next step and develop and get better and better and better. As an aside, we talked a little bit about FanDuel, right? Obviously, you can bet on a lot of different things when it comes to betting on sports. And I think one of the things that, is nice is there are a lot of different ways you can bet on all of these games, no matter what it is. One of the biggest games of the night in any league, the Knicks playing against the Cavaliers. Some people would tell you it is basically one of those games that probably, I would say, could be a preview of the Eastern Conference Finals. And so you look at it, you go to your FanDuel, and guess what? Cavs are favored by 4.5 points. Over under the total is 231.5. So basically, if you want to do the money line, you bet 100 on the Knicks, you're going to win 142. You bet 107. You bet 170 on the Cavaliers, you'll win 100. But no matter what, it is important now. In the way that it breaks it down for you on FanDuel, you can actually click on the game and then click, and it'll actually give you sort of what's going on, who's hurt, who's not going to be playing, who's going to be playing, but you got to be able to understand how to use your app. I think most people think you can just go on there and bet, which you can, but there's a lot of other little nuances you can do. So if you wanted to bet on the Cavaliers tonight, again, you're going to have to lay 4.5 points. But there are a lot of people that believe the Cavaliers are the best team in the East. There's a lot of people that believe that they might be the best team in basketball. And therefore, there are a lot of people who believe that you should probably go out and try to bet on them and make a little bit of money. But that's what you can do with your FanDuel app. I think that's one of the coolest things about your FanDuel app is that it is it's one of those situations where you can basically bet on anything, anyway, anywhere, period. And that's what you can do with your FanDuel app. Now then, you look at the Pirates. I think one of the things that is interesting is, despite everything that has gone on, the bottom line is there's a lot of people who are still not necessarily buying what the Pirates are selling. And I'm talking about those people in Vegas. If you look at the Major League Baseball odds, okay, over under for Milwaukee, for instance, 89.5 for the most part. There's at FanDuel, it's only 83.5. But if you go to the Pirates, wherever the Pirates are here, you will see that it is going to be very interesting if it moves at all, if Connor Griffin continues to play the way he's playing, and you start to, see, well, maybe it's going to be interesting, but maybe not. Well, here you go. The over-under is 77.5 for the Pirates. It has actually risen a little bit to 78.5. So my point is 77.5, 78.5. When there are other teams in your division that their over-under is 89, 90, tells me that they don't think necessarily that you're going to be a legitimate contender. But stranger things have happened. Again, I think one of the things that Connor Griffin does for you, and I think this is a really important thing, if he's good enough, then all of a sudden, guess what happens? You get to a point where you can use Nick Gonzalez and Jared Triola, almost, figure out which one is, your best fit at third base. You have, the other one can be, or both of them can be utility players for you. You can move them around. You can use both of them at DH at times if you need to. it gives you some flexibility. You can also still use Nick Gonzalez on second base. When you want just to give a day off. There's a lot of different things you can do if you bring Connor Griffin up, because he opens the door for so many other things. If he is going to take, if he's going to take sort of the shortstop position and run with it, that's all I'm telling you. Be very interesting to see what happens there. But to me, I think it's really important to remember that, you've got a lot of different ways that they can go if they bring Connor Griffin up, because they can use so many different situations to try and create at-bats for other people and all the other good stuff. So to me, you want to bring Connor Griffin up, especially if he's proven that he should be here, which I think he has, and I think he will. I think, you look at what they have. I don't know. You got a power hitting shortstop, which is that's what we keep hearing he is. And you put him into this lineup. O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds, they return to form. Now all of a sudden you've got three guys that can, maybe drive in runs and hit home runs. And then you've got, a couple of the other guys, a couple of the newer guys that you brought in. And then, God forbid, if Henry Davis goes crazy. Now all of a sudden it looks like you have a team that has a chance legitimately with the pitching staff that they have to go out and be really good as well. So to me, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about with the Pirates. I'm not saying they're going to win it all. I'm not saying they're going to win anything, actually. All I'm saying is I think the pieces are there. This is the first time probably that I've seen the Pirates in the preseason where I can make a case, a legitimate case, that the pieces are in place, and if they perform well, they're going to have an opportunity to go out and win enough games to try and get themselves into playoff contention. If you look at what the wild card, probably is only going to take like 85, 86 wins to get there. And so what would be interesting is if the Pirates are trending in that direction, would they still trade some of these contracts at the trade deadline? And I'm saying they probably would not, nor should they. But to me, the key to it all is the pitchers. And as long as the pitchers show up and play well this year, they're going to have an opportunity to win a lot more games than people think they can. We'll talk a little bit about the Steelers tomorrow. But until then, enjoy your day.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.